Miracle dice are powerful. You decide when you pass important rolls like advance rolls, save rolls, those random damage rolls. There's no, oh, I'll lose the game if I don't roll a 6 right now. Well, I know I will roll a 6. God wills it. I am the one the God Emperor acts through on this tabletop. I am the representation of the God Emperor for my battle sisters. It is already established that anime characters can be tied to major religions. As the miracle dice are so powerful, a detachment that gives you more miracle dice is going to be a strong detachment. That is something we have to test. So let's go and try and get 1 million miracle dice, or at least see just how many miracle dice we can get and how we can use them. The theme put forward by Games Workshop for this detachment was all about jump pack sisters. The Seraphim, the Zephyrim, the Canoness with a jump pack, mainly that, because they wanted to sell a new model, a model you should kit bash instead. But how far can we take that? Can we become the sky? Those are two aspects of what the Army of Faith can do. Lots of miracle dice and jump packs. There is a third aspect it can do really well, which we will come to later. Those are the tactics, but I can't explain the tactics well if I don't properly introduce the detachment. Now introducing Her Revered Holiness, the bearer of St. Eleanor's Blade, the Army of Faith. This is the detachment that leans into the miracle dice aspect by giving you more miracle dice, as well as having a very good set of general stratagems. Unlike many other armies like the Genestealer cult, when they get a dedicated detachment that's just for some specific units like the Biosanctic Brood Surge, those stratagems only work on those keyword units. Nothing for other units like Jackal Bikers in the Biosanctic Brood Surge. Even though it's the jump pack detachment, the Army of Faith has 5 stratagems that work on all Adepta Sororitas units. Tanks, infantry, penitent units, jump pack units, they work on all of them and get better with jump pack units. The Bringers of Flame has several stratagems that only work on vehicles, specifically transports. The Hallowed Martyrs has some general stratagems, but they are more defined, some only in combat, some only for characters, some for exploding vehicles. And we know the Penitent Host has one stratagem that isn't about penitent units, and even then it works better with penitent units. The Army of Faith can suit almost any Sisters of Battle player. Even if your army looks like a Penitent Host army, it can work in the Army of Faith detachment. We have 2 great stratagems that work for any unit in combat or shooting. The Shield of Faith works whenever you need it to, and Light of the Emperor lasts a full turn. Only the combat stratagem Faith and Fury is limited to the combat phase, and Angelic Descent is the up-down hit-and-run stratagem that many factions enjoy. The only stratagem missing is a deep strike outside of 3 inches instead of 9 inches, which would have let the Inferno pistols be in range immediately after deep strike. The Light of the Emperor is the Death Guard don't get to play today stratagem. It counters any -1 to wound on Death Shroud Terminators, and it lets vehicles fire without the -1 to hit from Big Guns Never Tire and being bracketed if the Exorcist falls to 4 wounds or fewer. This is not ignore all modifiers. The Index had that. So firing indirectly, you still need a 4+ to hit, and Armor of Contempt, or the chaotic version, will still remain. As it can come as an aura, you can affect a lot of units at once. Use it on a jump pack unit, and all Adepta Sororitas units within 3 inches of that jump pack unit also get the benefit of the stratagem. Much the same as Blinding Radiance. This is the -1 to hit stratagem that reminds everyone that we are girls, and so we have a smaller hitbox. A very useful stratagem to make the penitent units harder to hit when they wouldn't benefit from like the Bringers of Flame Shield of Aversion, which lets you ignore 1 point of armor penetration from the enemy, which means that you're still on your invulnerable save. Every unit is going to enjoy Blinding Radiance, and if you use it on a jump pack unit, it becomes an aura. It's worded well to say that if a unit is selected as a target, you can choose to apply this stratagem to a jump pack unit within 3 inches, and the aura applies to all units within 3 inches. So even though your Arco-Flagellants were selected as the target of an enemy attack, you can still pick the Seraphim unit as the target of the stratagem, and that will still affect the Arco-Flagellants in a good way. And this aura also affects tanks. Who doesn't want their tanks to be harder to hit? Shield of Faith is another aura, but it's very dependent on your opponent if you ever use it. If there are lots of mortal wounds from psychic powers or devastating wounds from massed combi weapons, this stratagem works. I only like to use it if I can have an aura from it because 5+ feel no pain and only against some attacks is very light. If the odds are I will save a tank by using the stratagem so it can fight on in my coming turn, then I'll use it. It can be used at any time after you know you are going to suffer some mortal wounds, so exploding spore mines that are confirmed to do damage can be stopped. But this is the stratagem I have used the least. If you forget it's here, it's not a problem. Those are the 3 defensive aura stratagems. There are 2 stratagems for offense. Divine Guidance for the shooting phase or fight phase, and Faith and Fury for Lance, which gives you +1 to wound in a turn in which you charged. I do love Divine Guidance. If the enemy uses Armor of Contempt, you can counter it. If the enemy would survive if they roll a 6+ armor save and you don't want to risk your Exorcist or Hunter Killer Missile failing because of a lucky roll, get rid of that save entirely. And it is especially good on anti-infantry weapons like Seraphim Bolt Pistols and Hand Flamers, well, any flamers. Anything that ignores cover already will be able to get great benefit from AP-1, whereas AP-1 alone would otherwise disappear into the benefit of cover and be wasted. Faith and Fury giving Lance is great stuff, because the Battle Sisters are weak. Their attacks are Strength 3 or Strength 4 if you have a power weapon. We have trouble wounding enemies, so this is great for charging Zephyrim, Sacrosanct, any charging combat unit. And I think it's better than the other combat stratagems of the other detachments. Hallowed Martyrs gives you rerolls to hit, and it's only rerolling wounds if you are very badly hurt and below half strength. So you can reroll to wound, but only if you have very few models left to take advantage of it. Compared to the Bringers of Flame lethal hits, well, we have that on Zephyrim already, and Palatines and Sacrosancts, the main combat units. We don't need lethal hits. The Penitent Host Passion of the Penitent is for Penitent models only to get critical hits on a 5+. And aside from the Priest, they all have sustained hits, so it's designed to give you more sustained hits. But we rarely need more attacks. Archoflagellants can have more attacks anyway. So I think Army of Faith might have the best combat stratagem, and you can combine that with Divine Guidance, because Divine Guidance is not limited to the shooting phase. +1 to wound and an extra armor penetration is going to make Repentia or Archoflagellants do a lot of damage. So although the Army of Faith takes the 9th edition style of the Sacred Rose, where they had more miracle dice, this detachment could also suit the Bloody Rose. Their units had bonus armor penetration on combat weapons and pistols. In 10th edition, you can have that again and on any unit. And the Lance attack, well, the Bloody Rose sure do love to charge into combat. So there is your theme. The wars conducted by the Rose's factions. Sounds like it could be catchy, I'll have to workshop the phrase. And the last stratagem is for getting a jump pack unit where you need them, Angelic Descent, the opposite of the Seraphim's own Angelic Ascent, and it's known as an uppy-downy stratagem. You take the unit up off the board at the end of your opponent's fight phase, and then it comes back down via Deep Strike in your next movement phase. This lets a jump cannoness completing secondary missions to get around the board. If you had Zephyrim escorting your army with the Aura stratagems and you got separated, this puts you right back together. Seraphim that have destroyed their nearby opponents can see an open objective and think, oh, don't mind if I do. This is the only stratagem that has a limit on which units can use it. The enhancements are also very good. You're not skipping over these unless you have spare points. These can be a very key part of your army. For the moment, I'm just going to look at St. Eleanor's Blade and the Triptych enhancement. The other two I'm going to explain later. The Blade of St. Eleanor can go on a Palatine, probably. It could also be on a Canoness. Giving you bonus armor penetration is valuable for getting through saves because of how popular power armored armies are on the tabletop. Everything that's a Space Marine is going to be in power armor and have a 3+ save. Same for Chaos Space Marines. And a lot of the Eldar and Dark Eldar now come equipped with a 4+ or 3+ save. The Palatine can become AP-3, and with Divine Guidance could be AP-4, that denies the average Chaos Space Marine a save. And the Canoness could use Divine Guidance on herself once per battle round for free, as in for 1 less command point than currently, and it costs 1 command point. Remember that for the Palatine's Rapturous Blows, you just need to score a successful wound to get the bonus mortal wounds. A 6 to hit from lethal hits is also a successful wound. But the mortal wounds that come from rapturous blows don't have precision. They follow the normal damage process and come after the regular attacks. So if there was a character with a strong invulnerable save, like a Dark Eldar Archon, attack with the Novitiates or whichever unit is with the Palatine, then use the Palatine to attack the bodyguard models, and if you kill them all, those mortal wounds smack the Archon as they are the only model left in that unit. Nice enhancement. The triptych of the Macarian Crusade is pricey at 20 points. That is half a Dialogus. But it keeps you alive. If you have a lone character like a lone Dialogus who runs around completing missions, though in this detachment a lone canoness with jump pack is preferred, well, that's an easy kill for the enemy, but not with the triptych. Each phase you use any miracle dice to pass your save. Doesn't matter the AP, all of your models have an invulnerable save. AP -5 hits, you discard a miracle dice of a 1, and your 6+ invulnerable save is passed. And because you're using the Army of Faith, you get 2 acts of faith per unit per phase, so you do that a second time each phase. That 3 wound toughness 3 model is now a pain to kill. So long as you have miracle dice, and you can have lots of miracle dice. So let's get into that first strategy, drowning your enemy in miracle dice the way guard players drown their foe in lasgun shots. This detachment lets you use 2 miracle dice per unit per phase. That is amazing in theory. So why is it good? If you're using melter weapons, you know you're firing with AP -4. So if you can pass the wound roll with a miracle dice, you know that the high AP means the enemy will not get a save. So that wound roll miracle dice is not wasted if the enemy just passed a save. You know they're going to fail it, and then you can use another miracle dice to get high damage on that melter weapon. You can, either with the triptych or not, pass 2 saves that would either kill your lone character or a tank, or a unit on an objective which is about to be healed by a hospitaller. Unlike the Hallowed Martyrs, you are choosing life. The Dialogus makes 2 dice into a 6, because every time you make an act of faith, you change the dice to a 6. You make 2 acts of faith per unit per phase in this detachment. Oh look, the Dialogus is in a unit of Battle Sisters that also has Astrid and Agatha, and you've just rolled a 6 on each of your multi-melter wound rolls. That's a lot of devastating wounds coming your way, Abaddon. I hope you can keep your arms on for that. But why is this not so good and only good in theory? Well, it depends entirely on the miracle dice you have. If you don't have many miracle dice, the detachment rule is pointless. If you don't have good miracle dice with high numbers, it doesn't matter that you can use 2 on a unit if you don't even want to use 1. And a lot of the time, 1 miracle dice is enough, especially when using abilities, like when you discard a miracle dice on a Palatine for rapturous blows. The detachment rule rarely comes into play, which kind of sucks as a detachment rule, especially when you also need to resource manage those miracle dice to have a chance of using 2. So we need solutions. First, ways to get lots of miracle dice, perhaps up to 1 million miracle dice, and then how to get good miracle dice. If you are using this detachment, either you love the general stratagems, or you are using it to lean hard into the army rule and make the most of miracle dice. But forget using 2 per unit per phase, just have more miracle dice to use more miracle dice, and that is what this detachment does. You need miracle dice and quickly, otherwise, why are you playing the Army of Faith? You could be playing Bringers of Flame, where you always get a boost to movement and at short range get a much needed boost to shooting. Or you could play the reactive Hallowed Martyrs and do everything with +1 to hit or wound after taking casualties. But any Adepta Sororitas player should know how to get miracle dice even if you don't plan on using 2 at once. But to use 2 at once, you need miracle dice ASAP. And ASAP is an abbreviation. It stands for Adepta Sororitas Acquire Polygons. Get those miracle dice. We can get miracle dice from simulacrums. Battle Sisters have them, Dominions have them, Novitiates have them. Infiltrating Novitiates can be on an objective immediately. You control objectives at the end of your command phase, and that is also the time you generate miracle dice. So turn 1, you can get a miracle dice. Scouting Dominions can also get straight onto an objective before the first turn starts. And generating miracle dice from a simulacrum is a unit ability that you have as long as you have a simulacrum in the unit. The simulacrum model doesn't need to be the model on the objective. Each objective generates a miracle dice, it isn't each squad. So if a Dominion squad was stretched out and able to control 2 objectives, each objective could generate a miracle dice from that one squad. And the way simulacrums work, you roll 1d6. On a 1 to 3 you get nothing. If you rolled a 4, you get a miracle dice of a 4. If you rolled a 5, you get a miracle dice of a 5. If you rolled a 6, you get a miracle dice of a 6. It isn't that on a 4+, you get to roll up a new miracle dice. It's a set value, and you can't generate low miracle dice that way. It's a good miracle dice or nothing. And the enhancements also generate miracle dice. There is Divine Aspect, the one I didn't talk about before. If you can make an enemy simp for you and fail a battle shock test, you get a miracle dice. Unfortunately, this is in the movement phase, so you can't flip command phase objective control. But who are you going to use it on? A beautiful Hospitaller? Or the divine aspect of this wrinkly old priest man? He is called Dadius for a reason. Or there's the beautiful Dogmata, and then the enemy within 6 inches is also going to be at -1 to the test. It's still not a great use of resources to have a Dogmata under the current rules. This is very much the I had 5 points spare enhancement. But it can, in theory, generate a miracle dice. The enhancement to take, and maybe always take, is the Litanies of Faith. It can only be used on a Palatine or a Canoness, but that Canoness could be on foot or with a jump pack. You take a leadership test, it's not a battle shock test, so there's nothing bad from failing it, but if you pass, you get a miracle dice. This can work with a Palatine and a Dialogus in a Battle Sister squad. Then the Palatine can use the better 6+ leadership of the Dialogus. And this character combo goes beyond that, but we'll get to that a bit later. The Blade of St. Eleanor is also an enhancement that generates miracle dice when you kill something. If you kill something, and it can be anything, you get a miracle dice. With precision, you can assign the attacks to an enemy character, but you don't have to. A character might get lucky on their invulnerable save, so assign an attack to a bodyguard model and kill them, you generate a miracle dice, and then you can put the rest of the attacks on the character you want dead. The stratagems in this detachment also generate miracle dice. If you use the 2 offensive stratagems, Divine Guidance and Faith and Fury, as long as you kill at least 1 enemy model, you get a miracle dice. Just fighting and using the useful things to help you fight gives you more miracle dice. That's great. There are units that generate miracle dice. A Canoness or a Jump Canoness can use the 1 command point stratagems for free. Perhaps I don't need to use the Divine Guidance stratagem for +1 armor penetration anywhere. If I go up to AP -1, it'll be ignored because of cover, or the Armor of Contempt, or the Word Noodle Chaos version, Obfuscate and Flailingly Obdurate. That one. I am curious how that would be translated into other language, but any explanation of the meaning in another language would probably be to say, resistance you get from being stubborn, a sort of armor of contempt. But I could use the free stratagem on the Canoness, even knowing the armor penetration will be counted, because as long as I kill a model with that unit, I get a miracle dice. And it didn't really cost me a command point, it was a free ability. Morven Val generates miracle dice when she kills stuff. There are 2 parts to the Righteous Repugnance rule. You can discard a miracle dice to get 3 more attacks. Full stop. Each time an enemy unit is destroyed by Morven Val, you gain 1 miracle dice. It doesn't matter if you did the first bit to discard a dice or not. And as we are Adepta Sororitas, just playing the game gives us miracle dice at the start of each player turn. So that's our player turn and your opponent's player turn. Every time a unit dies, we get a miracle dice. And whenever you use miracle dice on a unit with a cherub, you can re-roll up a new miracle dice. That is kind of recycling, but actually it's also generating additional miracle dice, you just have to use them in the first place. So that isn't quite like Morven Val's. You have to actually use a miracle dice in order to get more miracle dice. The way miracle dice are generated and work is going to be changed in December 2024, so the things I've just said are how it worked before that. When the change is announced, I will have a new video explaining that change, so look out for that. That is how we get miracle dice, but getting good miracle dice is harder. That is for the Manual of St. Griselda in the Bringers of Flame detachment, and it's for the Psalm of Righteous Judgment in the Penitent Host detachment. We don't get good miracle dice outside of regular unit abilities. The Triumph for St. Catherine generates a miracle dice of a 6 at the start of each battle round. Wonderful. And having a Dialogus in a unit turns any miracle dice into a miracle dice of a 6 when you use it on that unit. That is also wonderful. And that one can be done twice per phase per unit. So while we don't get better miracle dice in this detachment, the Army of Faith has a few extra ways of generating miracle dice compared to the other detachments, from the Enhancements and the Stratagems. So here's a 1000 point army list that focuses on getting lots of miracle dice. There is a Hospitaller. They are great in smaller games, whereas they're not so great in larger games. There are far fewer murder death ball combos that can wipe out a squad of sisters in one go in 1000 point games. And it is much harder to do that when there is a 5+ feel no pain, and as long as you survive, you can bring back sisters. You hold objectives rather well with that unit. Certainly long enough to make them sticky, and you can generate a miracle dice with the simulacrum and move on to the next objective in your following turn. I have Divine Aspect on the Hospitaller just because that is the third character available, and I had at least 5 points spare after making the list. That is why we have the Divine Aspect. You might as well. The Dominion squad gets split up by an Immolator, because 2 units means you can get more miracle dice when they die. It's a little something. And you can have 5 Dominions with a Simulacrum holding your home objective for the game, but I prefer to have them scout and move to a forward position to generate miracle dice there. The home objective is where the sisters start to use Defenders of the Faith to sticky that objective. If the enemy has no deep striking units, which is entirely possible at 1000 points, that is a safe objective for you for the rest of the game. The other 5 Dominions in an Immolator provide the Melter Punch, and the Multi-Melter of the Immolator helps with that. The Immolator gives Ignore Cover, so that between that and Divine Guidance, you can have AP -5 melters on a Dominion squad that ignores cover. A 2+ save now means no save without an Invuln save. And that describes a lot of elite infantry. Orc Meganobs, Votan Hearthguard, now they have no save. And you can use miracle dice to wound them. That would be a 4+ to wound a Hearthguard squad with a character, unless you use the Light of the Emperor in preparation to remove that modifier to the Meltagun wound roll. Another option is to have the Palatine with that squad to provide lethal hits. The upside is, in a vehicle, the unit can still scout even though the Palatine no longer has scout in the codex. There is a special rule for the Dominions to do that. But to use the lethal hits, you have to roll a 6 to hit. And you don't get many shots with the Meltagun. And there is no Dialogus to make it happen with a miracle dice because you can't double up in Dominion squads, only Battle Sister squads. So the Palatine would go with the Sacrosanct so that their halberds, which already have sustained hits, can also have lethal hits. And the Sacrosancts get their own -1 to wound ability. This unit could be in the Immolator, but then the Dominions would not get split. And that is one of the main reasons to have an Immolator. The Palatine has the Blade of St. Eleanor because anything that improves their strength means it is easier for them to wound, and as long as the Palatine is wounding, you are generating mortal wounds as well. A Palatine that can't wound is just kind of sad. The Jump Cannoness wants to be on the table to use Litanies of Faith at the start of each turn. The Palatine could have had that enhancement instead if she was not going in an Immolator, and then the Cannoness could have had the Blade of St. Eleanor. Who said Eleanor's blade was a sword? It could be a halberd. It generates miracle dice when you kill a model. And I put the Jump Cannoness with the Zephyrum, which gives a free stratagem per battle round. And then they will be pulling out the Blinding Radiance to protect those Sacrosancts, who become -1 to hit and -1 to wound as they move up the table. The Zephyrum can charge into combat really fast, and the -1 to hit can also be used there. As an aura, we don't just support the Sacrosancts, otherwise I would use that stratagem on the Sacrosancts. It also supports the Immolator and the Exorcist. The Exorcist doesn't need to hide at the back. You hit on a 3+ with line of sight and wreck light vehicles and monsters of the 1000 point level. If I felt I was short of units, the Cannoness could go alone, then you have another unit to complete missions. And with a halberd she operates quite well alone, being able to spin into combat and get lots of extra attacks. But using a command point for free within a Zephyrim squad will allow the Zephyrim squad to charge with Lance or an extra AP, both of which generate a miracle dice if you kill at least one enemy model, and you should when there is a Canoness in the unit swinging a halberd around with once per game devastating wounds. It's a workable list. Now when it comes to battle size, the various detachments will do better at different sizes. The Bringers of the Flame is gun gets better as a special rule, so it doesn't matter if it's 1000 points or 2000 points, and their transport specialization will fit in either size. The Penitent Host will be able to stuff the army list with Penitent units at 1000 points, but the enemy is more likely to have a higher percentage of weapons that kill light infantry well. Just standard enemy infantry can do that, and you have more units to complete secondary and primary missions at the 1000 point level. So I guess the Penitent Host can go either way. But the Hallowed Martyrs are very good at 1000 points in smaller games, because the enemy will need to spend a higher percentage of their points on utility units, so there are not as many units that can destroy a whole Battle Sister squad in one go, so you are going to get more of your army with +1 to hit and wound. And there is Divine Intervention, which can be used on your characters and return a proportion of your army back to the field. It doesn't even need to be the big expensive characters like Morven Val. Each character can be brought back once, each Canoness and Palatine. Once per character, but the stratagem can be used multiple times in the game, unlike the reinforcement stratagem of the Imperial Guard and the Tyranids that are currently locked to once per game. So we could be playing with 1100 points worth of stuff over the course of the battle. The Army of Faith does better at 2000 points. You have more units that your Seraphim can support, and because you have more simulacrums and more units to die, you have more miracle dice to play with and use 2 at once on a unit. The 1000 point list I showed has ways to generate miracle dice through enhancements and stratagems and simulacrums, but it can't generate good miracle dice. There is no triumph. This time I didn't include a dialogus, so it relies on units that spend more miracle dice. Any miracle dice. The Hospitaller to get models back, the Palatine for mortal wounds, and the Zephyrim who gets sustained hits and lethal hits if they charged, and you discard a miracle dice. So play to the strengths that are available, so that even if all of your miracle dice are terrible, you still get good use from them. At 2000 points, you have the points resources to get the good miracle dice, and more than double the number of miracle dice of a 1000 point game. So here is a 2000 point list that should do that. I have a Canoness with Dominions. The unit can't scout with the Canoness, but they can get bonus AP for free. If the Canoness gets charged by an enemy unit that will utterly wreck them, she can activate her 2+ invulnerable save to stay alive, and if the miracle dice you roll at the start of the first player turn is low, it could be used to pass a save to keep her there and keep the enemy locked down. A lot of your units will be within 3 inches of one another because of the auras of the jump pack units, so not dying and blocking the enemy from consolidating into another one of your units is important. On the fight back, if the Canoness kills at least one enemy with the Blade of St. Eleanor, there is a miracle dice, plus a miracle dice from the Dominions dying. For the other Dominion squad, it is not melter guns. They are there to scout forward and prevent enemies from charging that other Dominion squad. If you want a screen to scout or be there to block enemy charges and beat enemy infiltrators, melter guns are a bad choice because they are 1 shot each. Even when trying to kill enemy infiltrators, bolt guns are a bad choice. You might kill 2 enemy scouts. You get more attacks from flamers. They are a good choice that have potentially the highest number of attacks, and with ignore cover and the option for -1 AP, they can clear light infantry from cover. Or storm bolters are good. 4 shots each at half range, and they are damage too. Think of enemy infiltrators. A lot of them have 2 wounds. Space Marine Scouts, Pure Strain Gene Stealers, Tau Stealth Battlesuits, Storm Bolters can clear them. So that Dominion squad wants to be able to scout onto an objective before turn 1 if possible, so that their Simulacrum can generate a miracle die on turn 1. The same for the Novitiates, another useful screen. We're adding screens upon screens. That can block the enemy from getting to your more valuable unit. And they want to infiltrate onto an objective that the Dominions can't get to turn 1, so that another objective is potentially generating as a miracle dice. While the Canoness on foot is probably using the Divine Guidance stratagem for free, an alternative is Blinding Radiance with the Jump Canoness and Seraphim. Only one of them can use the Rites of Battle ability each battle round. It is one unit using the Rites of Battle because they each have the Rites of Battle with the same rule name. The Seraphim and the Canoness provide the auras to protect a lot of Battle Sister infantry. It gets your sisters to the midboard and keeps them alive. Or with the massive number of hand flamers in that unit, we already ignore cover on hand flamers, so Divine Guidance for an extra AP is sweet. This Jump Canoness has Divine Aspect as her movement will let her get within 12 inches of a choice enemy, and you could potentially battle shock an enemy you are about to charge or move closer to. So no Overwatch, no shenanigans in the coming fight phase to stop your attacks. I have added a Palatine and Dialogus to 10 Battle Sisters. This is not the traditional unit for a combat-focused Palatine, but now those Battle Sisters have lethal hits. As the Dialogus with the Palatine that has Litanies of Faith has a better leadership to borrow to succeed and generate another Miracle Dice. And the combo goes beyond that. We can do 2 acts of faith per phase, so we could use any 2 Miracle Dice with the Dialogus to get 2 lethal hits because the Palatine grants the unit lethal hits. You can only double up on a Battle Sister squad, but a Melter Gun or Multi-Melter could be guaranteed to hit and wound because of lethal hits, and Miracle Dice are unmodified dice. The enemy maybe gets a save, but AP -4 or -5 with Divine Guidance usually means they don't. So that's at least 1 hit, and then a second Miracle Dice becomes a 6 for damage with a potential +2 for the Melter rule. Being able to take everything from your opponent with no chance involved is vicious. You rolled no dice. They rolled no dice. And their beloved and probably newly painted Carnifex has lost all of its wounds. Full health to dead. If an enemy only had 3 wounds left and you were in Melter range, now is a good time to use a Miracle Dice of a 1 to do enough damage to kill the enemy, and the cherub in the unit generates a new and hopefully better Miracle Dice. You can also do this for Overwatch. A tank rumbles into range, you Overwatch with the Multi-Melter. In the Army of Faith, both of the shots can be turned to 6s to hit and auto-wound and blow up the tank in the enemy turn. It's really good. The Palatine and Sisters and Dialogus is a big 200 point block, so you don't see it much in 1000 point games where any precision can kill a Dialogus and end this being a damage dealer. In 1000 points, it might end up being your main damage dealer for the points you've spent, and that is a lot of points for one good Multi-Melter. But at 2000 points, it's another great arsenal option, and you are still a Battle Sister squad, holding objectives, generating Miracle Dice, and you can get rid of light infantry with your bolt guns. On the Superior, I have a Condemner bolt gun, because it has devastating wounds. If you need 1 wound off a tank or horrible thing with an invulnerable save, add a 6 to the wound roll and watch it fall to a tiny piece of wood. It's a good weapon, and I keep being surprised that the Dialogus is our cheapest option. And if that Battle Sister squad became battle shocked, well, the Dialogus can say, we're not battle shocked anymore, and we keep holding the objective. Junith generates command points in exchange for bad Miracle Dice, and we should have a few in that first turn. Her inherent -1 to hit ability lets her squad stay back from the Seraphim aura and still be at -1 to hit. Junith is useful at the back and generates those command points in safety. As well as being a Miracle Dice hungry army, the Army of Faith is a command point hungry army, and we need to keep feeding it. With the Flamer, Heavy Flamer and Hand Flamer of the Sister Squad and Junith's own, it discourages enemies from deep striking nearby, as Overwatch can wreck light infantry like Tempestus Scions or Vespids that could really damage a Battle Sister squad. Once the enemy reserves have been committed, with Defenders of the Faith, the home objective is secured and Junith's squad can move forward. There is a lot of moving up and getting units into the right position. The 2 inches extra movement from the Triumph of St. Catherine is useful for that. The Triumph is a combat force in its own right. 18 attacks with AP -2, and with the Bloody Rose Petals bonus, which also affects the Triumph model, AP -3, and we can get to that sweet AP -4 with, you know it, Divine Guidance. And the Triumph is a unit that gives us those good miracle dice. Each battle round, you get a 6. It isn't just the Dialogues and Palatine squad that gets the max damage melter weapons. But we need more units to use those high miracle dice, otherwise we're generating them for no one. The Exorcist is one of those users. Unlike the Castigator's Cannon, the Exorcist missile launcher has random damage which can be manipulated to be high damage. The Paragon Warsuits with Morwen Val is another unit. Paragons are surprisingly easy to break, and I don't just mean the models which have loads of pieces. They can be kept safe near the auras of the Seraphim or plain out of sight behind cover before the movement and charge bonus from the Triumph gets them into combat. The Warsuits need their multi-melters. You can use other weapons, but the multi-melters are best. Their special rule encourages you to be monster hunters. You get full rerolls to hit and wound from Val, and +1 to hit and wound from their own ability, means that you are unlikely to need miracle dice for that wound roll. You can use the high miracle dice on damage rolls. The Warsuits is an anti-tank basket we are putting many eggs into. You don't want Stormbolters, there is enough infantry killing power in all the flamers we have. Grenade launchers are the better option, and it doesn't really matter for the combat weapons, both are good, you could have a mix. I like having them all the same to make rolling the dice quicker, and in the Army of Faith I prefer the Mauls with the higher damage. Their AP is lower than the Warblades, but this detachment has a stratagem to compensate if needed. And Morwen Val wants to get stuck in. You can make her attacks better by discarding a miracle dice, and that usually recycles as she generates another one if she destroys an enemy unit. And lastly we have 5 Zephyrim, which are a utility unit. They can deep strike to complete missions behind enemy lines, and if you need to get across the battlefield, they're a good choice for angelic descent. The Seraphim with their own angelic ascent are quick to get around the tabletop, the Zephyrim may need more help. And you could have this army list the other way around. 10 Zephyrim escorting the army with the Canoness, while the Seraphim drops in on the enemy. If the enemy home objective is held by light infantry like cultists or 5 Acolyte hybrids mining for command points, the Seraphim can land 9 inches away, kill the cultists, and move 6 inches onto the objective. The Zephyrim can be another wave moving up to help the Dominions, as their banner lets you reroll to charge and get the Jump Canoness into combat. The Jump Pack Canoness may still want the Hand Flamer and Power Weapon, because as a power weapon, it gets the bonuses of the Zephyrim ability. It is the only Canoness weapon to do so. And I have a video explaining why the Halberd is not the best option, it depends on the situation. We have lots of miracle dice and you know what to spend it on. The Exorcist damage, damage on melter weapons like on the Paragon Warsuits, the melters of Dominions, the Battle Sisters with a Dialogus. Any miracle dice will suit them. Miracle dice are so good. More miracle dice is more betterer. In the Army of Faith where you have miracle dice to spare, any of the characters that give you more stuff for your miracle dice are great. The Palatine, Junith, the Dialogus, the Hospitaller, Zephyrim, and Val, and she also generates miracle dice. They use the bad miracle dice and make them good, so they are all valuable units. If you wanted to buy any of the models for them, well, you may be able to convert them from the Novitiate box set, which is expected to be re-released as a Kill Team version, with Kill Team tokens, but that's harder to do for Morwen Val. If you wanted to buy any of them, here is where you can do it, and that is cheaper than Games Workshop. All of these places with their percentage discounts are linked in the description, and these are my affiliates. You get the models, the companies get money, and those companies give me a little bit of money for recommending them, and I only recommend the companies that treat you well. I have only heard positive things back from all of them. And I do like a good discount. Miracle dice, especially high miracle dice, are best spent on the less cool things. Yes, a damage roll of a 6 is nice, if it will kill something for certain. But passing a leadership test so that your unit isn't battle shocked and can complete actions and hold objectives and use stratagems, that is important. I lost a game against Tyranids because I spent a turn with basically my whole army battle-shocked because I wouldn't use my precious 6s to pass battle-shock tests against the Shadow in the War. It was such a close game, and if I'd passed like 2 tests on that turn, I would have won. Yeah, the high win rates on the sisters doesn't mean that when you pair with someone from another faction, the person with the higher win rate gets the victory. Your fragile sisters can and will become martyrs, even if you spend miracle dice to pass some saves. Learn to use a miracle dice of a 6 to make sure you succeed on a 7.1 inch charge, because the other dice you roll in the charge roll will be at least a 1. I learned that from playing Penitent Host. Repentia don't like being left out in the open, neither do Zephyrim. Use a miracle dice on an advance roll to guarantee your unit gets onto an objective. That is important in the game for scoring points. You need to roll a 2, Don't assume that it will be fine, use a 2 or a 3. If you need a hunt to kill a missile to do 1 more damage to kill an enemy, hit with a 2 and wound with a 2 or a 3. You can use 2 acts of faith per unit, so perform 2 miracles as the one-shot weapon that I always roll a 1 for is forced by the hand of God to actually hit. As long as you spend command points and use enhancements, you get more miracle dice. So many miracle dice, some of them are bound to be 6s. Please, let some of them be 6s. Now we come to the second part of the way to use this detachment. Blight. I have gone for the middle ground of a 1,500 point list for this. When talking about the Army of Faith detachment for the first time in another video, I made a mistake. When I talked about it the second time, briefly, I made the same mistake and no one has called me out on it in the comments of either video. You see, I was thinking about my standard army list and how I like to play the Sisters of Battle. It made me think that I'm more of a Bringers of Flame sister, even though the Army of Faith should suit me better as I play a descendant of the Order of the Sacred Rose. The Bringers of Flame was the wrong choice for me. I said that the auras from the stratagems were not very valuable because I didn't want to have Seraphim supporting lots of sisters in a basic battle line. I forgot that the jump pack units can also benefit from one another. If you want to ignore the -1 to hit from stealth, you use the Light of the Emperor. Now 2 of my units of Seraphim are leaping forward and ignoring the penalty to hit. It's annoying when you have 2 units in combat, but your defensive stratagem will only keep 1 of them alive. -1 to hit for enemies in combat is great, but if I only use it on 1 of my units, the other one will take the attacks instead. But not in this detachment. 2 units of 5 Zephyrim attacking the same enemy can both get this defensive bonus. Going small with the jump pack units does not leave you caught out. You keep them close together, both getting the stratagem benefit, and if you need to complete 2 actions in different places, you can split them up, which you couldn't do if they were 1 unit of 10. So I've been thinking more about what to do with lots of flying sisters and how to use it best on the battlefield. Oh, and Seraphim are a great choice for auras for your foot-slugging troops. They help with an aura of -1 to hit. If you have them behind your other units and tanks, you can move 12 inches, shoot, and then move back 6 inches to keep providing an aura of 3 inches. And they are a screen to stop your tanks being charged and smashed. So an all-flying sisters army is going to be very fast. Our small 5 sister units can fly to where they are needed. They can deep strike into the enemy deployment zone or onto empty objectives. Seraphim moving after shooting could have been the ones to clear that objective and now occupy it. If your sisters are in the wrong place, angelic descent to get out of there and into the right place. Although you are drawing from a deck, you don't know what secondary missions you are going to draw. Most of them involve being in a place and doing a thing. Angelic descent with deep strike lets you pick which place you will end up in to do the thing that gets you the victory points. I am not saying that this is the best way to play this detachment, which is a detachment suitable for all Adepta Sororitas units. I don't know if this was the intended way the designers wanted or expected you to play, but I am saying it is a viable way to play. It's just very fragile. Keep your sisters out of line of sight until you strike. If you can't, use Blinding Radiance to offset attacks. We can concentrate our forces on a flank and strike through the enemy into their deployment zone. That is the benefit of speed. If there is a big enemy unit that would be very hard to break, ignore them. It could be 6 Gravis Marines with Manius Calgar, or in a 1000 point game could be simpler but still tough for that size game, like 20 Orcs with a Pain Boy. Here is the thing. Don't group up too much. This is something to generally remember for the Army of Faith. The auras are a nice bonus, but are not mandatory. That is the trap of the detachment, making a ball of units and not having board control or controlling objectives. If going for the all-flying ladies, remember the trap of the Bringers of Flame. Just because you can go fast and rush into the enemy face, doesn't mean that you should go fast. Like infiltrating. I have seen people infiltrate units just because they can, and they end up getting taken out in an easy first turn charge. All of your special rules are optional. Use them at the best time. So let's talk deeper about the units in this army list. The Canonesses support and are supported by the big units of Seraphim and Zephyrim, while the smaller squads act in the role of screening, striking at enemy screens, and completing missions. Remember that the Zephyrim banner is not just for rerolling charges, but rerolling advance rolls too. You get to the right place quickly. The larger Seraphim squad and one of the smaller units of Seraphim have Inferno pistols, where most people prefer hand flamers, but we lack anti-tank in this army list. We rely on hit and run tactics, but to get through tougher enemies, flying into their face and firing massed Inferno pistols also causes a lot of damage. If you get charged, in your turn, don't fall back, stay in combat, and fire those Inferno pistols at point blank range. It works. If you manage to kill all of the enemy models and freed yourself from combat, you can use the Angelic Ascent to move 6 inches more to a place of safety, assuming you didn't want to charge in somewhere new and put the Canonesses' halberd to good use. The final squad of 5 Seraphim have hand flamers to better strike at infantry such as the ones inevitably on the enemy home objective. For more anti-tank, we have an Exorcist. It doesn't break the theme, missiles fly, and the Exorcist comes in the big Army of Faith battle box. Keep it safe, fire indirectly, and keep those missiles going all game to wear down and break enemy tanks and monsters. If you injure them enough to get to just a few wounds left, you can finish them with Inferno pistols or the grenade stratagem or the lethal hits of Zephyrim. If we had a flyer vehicle for the Adepta Sororitas, I would have used that instead, for the theme. And once again, we have included Junith with some battle sisters. Junith getting command points can be used on stratagems which generate miracle dice. It's all part of the great cycle. She gets miracle dice to make command points, you spend command points to get miracle dice. You want command points because of how easy and valuable the stratagems are to use. And Junith can fly, so the unit gains the fly keyword. Everyone wants to fly. It won't help the models to move, but it will let enemies with anti-fly keyword weapons hurt them. I've gone with melter weapons on this unit, as we need more if we end up against heavy infantry and vehicles. But for sticky objectives and high objective control, I have said in the past that you can have an Adepta Sororitas army without the battle sisters, I just prefer not to. The real utility unit that completes secondary missions is the Demonifuge. With Lone Operative, she can't be shot outside of 12 inches, so she will be left alone to score you victory points. She looks like she flies, so she suits the army list theme. By being close to actual jump pack units, she will benefit from defensive auras, and Stern can heroically intervene for free and fight first to protect her sisters and hopefully kill those force multiplying characters like Dark Apostles that give +1 to wound. Saint Celestine offers you an interesting choice. She and her 2 Gemini can fly around, annoying the enemy, tying them up in combat with her high save, invulnerable save, and feel no pain, before she comes back to life to keep the enemy engaged for longer. She could score victory points alone, like Stern, but without the lone operative rule. And as a jump pack unit, she can help the sisters and Exorcist with auras, or she could join a 5-sister strong flying unit. The Zephyrim with their banner work quite well as a delivery method for getting Celestine into combat, but unlike a jump Canoness, Celestine doesn't give her unit anything to help them in combat. She can heal them if they're not all dead, but there is no extra punch provided by special rules beyond her own Ardent Blade, which is quite similar to the jump Canoness's halberd. So this isn't even a gimmick list, it is viable. The sisters have a lot of tactics with their units, and I call this Saint Arabella's Flying Circus. If you enter a tournament and win with an army bearing that name, I will know why. Thank you for supporting me in that way. if not by throwing money at me to keep me alive and playtesting the unusual ways to play Adepta Sororitas. So now we come to the third strength of the Army of Faith. You may have realized it already, but it is worth stating. The Sisters of the Army of Faith survive attritional warfare. We don't do it through weight of bodies, that is more suited to the Hallowed Martyrs. We do it through endurance. Now, I'm not sure if the Valorous Heart players would prefer the Army of Faith or the Hallowed Martyrs for the theme of suffering and surviving. You Valorous Heart players will have to let me know if this detachment is your preference. Having Miracle Dice lets you deny the enemy Assassinate, or Bring It Down, or other secondaries like that by keeping your models alive by spending those Miracle Dice on armor saves. The enemy isn't allowed to kill you if you hold up a Miracle Dice and say no, in a firm voice. If you can spare Miracle Dice to keep one last sister alive with your Hospitaller, then you can bring back D3+1 in your next turn with another Miracle Dice, otherwise you would just bring back one. Imagifiers are good in the Bringers of Flame when the Shield of Aversion can keep up your 2+ save, but Hospitallers are my preference for the Army of Faith. If I had a Miracle Dice of a 2 to spend, I have the Sacrosanct save, or many useful abilities we have already mentioned. Here is the last army list for this detachment. 2,000 points that are frustrating for your opponent to kill. There are modifiers to attack your units, while you can ignore those same sort of modifiers in your enemy. In the mid to late game, spend lots of low-ish Miracle Dice on armor saves for tanks. Remember, you can do 2 acts of faith per unit in this detachment. So you have a line of tanks with the Seraphim behind, safe out of line of sight, so that they can aura all of them to be -1 to hit. 3 of the stratagems are defensive and come as auras. If the enemy can make your units -1 toughness, ignore it. Or if your shots are all going to be -1 to hit because the enemy is a lot of Kroot who have stealth, you can ignore that with the Light of the Emperor and do an Uno reverse with Blinding Radiance to make the enemy -1 to hit you. The auras that you can put out from your Seraphim will help all of your units reach the mid-board objectives and stay alive once you are there. Tanks are tough. They can output damage and chain onto one another with their special abilities, so you have an armored column going at the enemy. Unlike in 5th edition times, exploding tanks don't stay on the battlefield to block your units. The Castigator gives everything firing at the same target after it an extra point of armor penetration. Then you would fire the Immolator next. Everything fire after it gets Ignore Cover. The Castigator Battle Cannon already had Ignore Cover, so we don't need to fire that first. Then the Exorcist delivers the final hit. Even firing indirectly, we now ignore cover and have an extra point of armor penetration on attacks. Sadly, you can't use Miracle Dice to determine the number of shots on the Exorcist, because number of shots for an attack is not listed. You can see Junith Eroita is here again for the theme of everyone is -1 to hit. And they can be a separate group from the auras of the jump pack units, and it means we don't fall into the trap of grouping up and hitting the enemy in only one area. In the past, I would normally have an Imagifier with her to hoover up better Miracle Dice from nearby dead, but our units are going to be spread all over. With -1 to hit from Junith and a 5+ feel no pain against mortal wounds in a stratagem, and with the Hospitaller that I'm putting in the unit, this is an anvil, just as much as the Bringers of Flame and their Shield of Aversion. Having a Hospitaller in a Battle Sister squad is really good. In 2,000 points, it stays on the home objective, and if the Hospitaller can survive to the late game, there are not many units left that can break her Feel No Pain and stop her returning the high OC Battle Sisters. Then the Sisters can strike out of your deployment zone in turn 4 and turn 5. They can take objectives and stay there. Sisters have melter guns. They do well as a punching unit in the Army of Faith. If you need to kill a 5-wound model, use a Miracle Dice of a 3 when in melter range, and then use the unit's cherub to recycle it. You can then use another Miracle Dice on another melter gun's damage roll or wound roll if you need a 5 to wound and know the enemy won't get a save. It does hurt to use Miracle Dice and then have the enemy pass their save. I try and avoid that as much as possible. The Demonifuge completes missions and doesn't get shot, a great way of being able to endure enemy firepower if they just can't hit you, because of her lone operative rule. Celestine is a bit different. Celestine is going alone at this time. While the first attacks against her will go against one of her Gemini, as soon as that Gemini dies, the next attacks I'm putting on Celestine herself. As long as you're not in an attached unit, you can assign the attacks to any model in the unit, even if one of the models is a character. It's only when using the leader ability in an attached unit that you have to assign them to the bodyguard, then to the character. And while one of the Gemini is alive, so we keep at least one alive, Celestine has her 2+ save, 4+ invulnerable save, and a 4+ feel no pain. And in your command phase, you return a Gemini to the unit. If Celestine dies on a 2+, she is getting back up and rejoins her one remaining Gemini, at which point you can repeat the same cycle over again. Keep putting the attacks on Celestine, you have the armor save, the invulnerable save, and that feel no pain. Another aura you could have had was the Triumph of St. Catherine with the Valorous Heart Relic for a 6+ feel no pain. That's an option, but I haven't included them. And the Triumph is not a unit tied to this detachment or getting better endurance from this detachment. The Dialogus is quite different. She does exceptionally well in this detachment. And the Dialogus in a Battle Sister unit is not just for offense. Any 2 miracle dice per phase can be used to pass saves and keep your objective control 2 Battle Sisters alive and contesting objectives. The Canoness with the jump pack operates alone. She is another utility unit completing missions. With the Triptych, it's like having your own personal pocket Dialogus. Every time you use a miracle dice on a save roll, you automatically pass that save. It's going to be very annoying for your opponent to try and get rid of that one Canoness. And the Canoness can deep strike to where she needs to be to start doing those secondary missions. If you had a unit that ever felt too weak, you can have them start in reserve and come on from the board edge from turn 2 onwards, and that is an option for the Sacrosants. But the Sacrosants that are with a Canoness on foot, they are -1 to wound because of their ability. And the Canoness has her own once per game 2+ invulnerable save. It is exhausting for your enemy to keep trying to grind away, see that you are out of command points, you are finally out of miracle dice, and then you pull out an extra ability that gives you a 2+ invulnerable save. It's very tough. And I have a second Dialogus with Dominions, and that lets the Dominions do max damage, guaranteeing wounding against the biggest of monsters or passing 2 saves. The Dominions will be split by the Immolator. Dominions in a transport are really effective. Enemies may move within 9 inches, and the Dominions, and any characters that are with them, get to reactive move back inside of the transport. Embarking in a transport is not phase locked. If the transport then gets blown up, you get out of the other side, far away from the enemy's charges. They are the elusive Dominions. If you can't catch them to kill them, they stay alive and endure in the battle of attrition. And having a big armature for real Melter is a clever choice because we are not the Bringers of Flame. The Army of Faith doesn't do great against vehicles. The Bringers of Flame is a good counter because the Strength 10 Melter guns now have the strength to take them out. They're always going to be getting that +1 strength at 12-inch range because they're a 12-inch range weapon. The Army of Faith is trying to wound upwards. But if you can get that wound roll with a 5+ miracle dice and know the save will be failed, use another miracle dice on the damage roll. But if you were using Divine Guidance to cause damage to a vehicle but we don't destroy it, we don't get the bonus miracle dice. The Army of Faith can take on hordes well because it's easy to kill a horde model, and with -1 AP as an option, that can be halving the save of like a Termagant or a Guardsman. And -1 to hit upsets anything that hits on a 4+ or worse. The hordes have lower leadership, so Divine Aspect is more likely to work, generating you a miracle dice and battle shocking the enemy, more likely than if you were against elite Custodes. But against Space Marines they're a bit tougher, they have no light infantry. Everything is, 2 wounds and toughness 4 with a 3+ save at least. And they have Armor of Contempt to counter our -1 AP Divine Guidance, but we still gain a miracle dice if we kill at least 1, so we have the edge in that exchange there. It's just a shame that the Space Marines have so many rerolls from things like Oath of Moment that means that using -1 to hit is far less effective when they can just reroll any misses. Because you get more miracle dice and may need a boost to meet the Bringers of Flame strength, Hymns of Battle are very thematic for this detachment. All of your units with characters can be a little better for 1 battle round, and you should have the requisite 2 miracle dice to discard to activate them. If you don't know what I'm talking about, all those extra rules are in this video. Or you can see how the tournament players field the Army of Faith to bring victory. My darlings and viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this hour covering my favourite detachment. Have a great day of 40k.